What's up everyone, welcome to another camera comparison video. Today I have this Redmi K40 Pro and Realme GT. A lot of subscribers have requested for this video and yeah, now finally this video is here. I have been waiting for an update on Redmi K40 Pro and yeah, this video was made after that update. So camera performance of Redmi K40 Pro should be a bit better than before. If you have watched my other camera comparison videos of Redmi K40 Pro, then you already know that Redmi K40 Pro camera performance is not that good. Okay, check this video carefully, listen carefully. You are the judge, you watch through this video, check this video and let me know which one is better. And yeah, if you end up liking this video, then please don't forget to click on the like button and subscribe to this channel.
Memories fade away, wither out, but I can't ignore the ache.
The first thing you'd notice in ultra-wide photos is dynamic range, and then if you check for a while you will see that there is a big difference in color temperature. Some people have asked me what is the difference between white balance and color temperature. Actually, white balance corrects and neutralizes color temperature. White balance tries to make the photo natural by adjusting color temperature, and K40 Pro clearly has failed to do it correctly. Neither Realme GT has done it well, but a bit better than K40 Pro. Now, the next thing caught my attention is exposure and saturation. Yes, Realme GT definitely got more details in the shadows, but due to its poor texture processing and exposure, subject and foreground lost a lot of details. The same thing used to happen with K40 Pro earlier, but a lot of the issues are now fixed after this new update. Both of these two smartphones produced ultra-wide images which are really lucrative and social media ready. But the truth is, now K40 Pro beside this Realme GT looks more realistic. It grabbed more details, processed more textures, kept exposure pretty even, whether it's an outdoor photo or an indoor photo. Also, color grading is slightly better. One thing surprised me is K40 Pro now reproduced images with better color temperature. Yeah, still K40 Pro sometimes randomly increases its saturation. Actually, not much of a difference in performance when we try to take indoor low light photos. The difference in color grading is more visible. With a very good amount of details and processed textures, K40 Pro produced a very sharp and lucrative image. I must mention, most of the time when I've tried to take indoor low light photos, I mean ultra wide photos, Realme GT failed to produce natural white balance. IMX686 on K40 Pro versus IMX682 on Realme GT. Both got main sensors from Sony and both are last generation sensors. Comparison between photos taken with the main sensors of these two smartphones should be interesting. All of these pictures were taken on auto mode with AI enabled and auto HDR. Of course, both of these two have pro modes, so if you have the time to dial in and switch between options to get a pro shot of your choice, then you can. But most of the general users uses auto mode, and I feel like this represents true pros and cons of the smartphones. We see a similar trend. I mean, main sensor photos are somehow similar to those ultra wide photos. The main difference is not only in white balance, highlights and ambience are also pretty different. All these things actually jumps back and forth, but Redmi K40 Pro managed to get things in line and images are more natural and lucrative. Yes, color temperature is actually a bit warm on Realme GT, but not too much, nothing unacceptable. Once again, K40 Pro rendered colors with perfection, which doesn't make it as punchier and lucrative as Realme GT. But with good exposure and better dynamic range, images produced by Redmi K40 Pro is close to reality. Now, I must say, there are three things which I care most: details, textures and shadows. In low light environment, Realme GT failed to process photos with enough details and textures, and yes, most of the time shadows got crushed. Even if at a glance it looks sharp, it doesn't grab enough information to do much editing. I know it depends on personal preference, and I would like to know which one do you like and prefer. Neither Redmi K40 Pro nor Realme GT have that precious telephoto lens. This year almost all the brands got rid of telephoto lens on budget smartphones. Redmi K30 Pro Zoom had a pretty nice telephoto lens for 3x optical zoom. It's a clear downgrade. If you are thinking about K40 Pro Plus, no, that one also doesn't have any telephoto lens. Definitely with a better sensor and better cropping algorithm helps Redmi K40 Pro to get more details and textures. Up to 3x zoom, both are somewhat usable, but after that photos get too blurry and soft. As both use its main sensor, you can see white balance and color grading is similar to those usual pixel bin photos. If you check other attributes, then no, you are not gonna find a lot of differences. We need to do pretty heavy pixel peeping and nitpicking to get any other differences. Yeah, none of these two smartphones got that gimmicky depth sensor, but there is a macro sensor, which I think is really pretty useless. Both of these two smartphones maps depth using ultra-wide sensor, and a lot depends on stock camera application or the algorithm that process things at the background. When I compare portrait photos, I care about bokeh effect, edge detection, amount of textures processed in the subject, and the separation line blend. After checking a lot of portrait photos taken by these two smartphones, it is clear that there is a difference in white balance and tonal contrast. But I'm pretty surprised to see differences are pretty marginal. In terms of edge detection, none has performed like a flagship. Yeah, these aren't no flagships, but comparatively Redmi K40 Pro did well here. Color curve and saturation is also similar, which once again surprised me, and then I got to get the real differences in white balance, textures and shadows. Separation line blend performance is also pretty similar in indoor low light, but once again better on Redmi K40 Pro. Clearly Redmi K40 Pro has more details, processed more textures and portrays reality. Bokeh effect of Redmi K40 Pro used to be f1.6, but after update it's around f2.0, and that makes bokeh effect creamy and lucrative. I found a few issues on both of the smartphones. Redmi K40 Pro takes a while to actually grab a portrait photo. It's like there is a second or a split second gap between the moment when you click the shutter and when the actual photo is grabbed. So the subject has to be steady to get a perfect shot. On the other hand, Realme GT applies heavy saturation and unnecessarily decreases midtones. If you ask me, then yes, I would select K40 Pro for portrait, but the truth is none of these two makes me happy. What about night mode main sensor photos? Is there any improvement in K40 Pro? Yeah, here it's a bit tricky and it depends on personal preference. Do you want visibility? Do you want a photo that depicts reality? Do you want a picture with balance between brightness and details? This depends on what do you like. I prefer a good balance between noise, sharpness, highlights and textures. Truly, none of these two smartphones did as good as any other flagships. But K40 Pro seems a bit better. It has better color rendition, and in terms of grabbing the reality, it did better. K40 Pro also processed more textures. Yeah, these are night mode photos, and before you do any judgment, a lot of things aren't fixed. I mean, sometimes K40 Pro and sometimes Realme GT saturated the photos, increased highlights and got better shadow details. It's more like a puzzle. I have tried from a few different angles and lighting options and the results are the same. I would go with K40 Pro cause in terms of color grading, white balance, details and textures, K40 Pro did slightly better. Realme GT pictures are brighter, but it has very high highlights and ambience. I feel this ruins the vibe of a night picture. Moving on to selfie camera, and there is a drastic difference in performance. Everything is better on Realme GT selfie photos. I mean, from any aspect, K40 Pro selfies are almost incomparable with this Realme GT. Realme GT front sensor works fine and produced photos with more details and textures, while Redmi K40 Pro applied heavy skin smoothing beauty effect. Even if I have tried to disable the beauty effect, there was some beauty effect. Color rendition and skin tone is also better on Realme GT. Samara has tried a lot. She took about 30 pictures, and these pictures are actually the best of Redmi K40 Pro. Okay, I'm not going to describe these selfie portraits cause there is an international smartphone giveaway going on for subscribers. I would choose someone based on a valid and descriptive comment. Why don't you try to differentiate between these selfie portraits and make a comment? Okay, these clips were recorded at 1080p 30 frames per second, and then I have switched to 4K 30 frames per second to give you an instant idea of the difference. I really did not see much of a difference. Yeah, these are 4K 30 frames per second clips, and I think Realme GT produced this video clip with better white balance and saturation. In terms of details, sharpness and color rendition, I would go with K40 Pro. Exposure is as worse as it can be on both of these two smartphones. I am sad to see Redmi K40 Pro suddenly increased ambience beyond what is necessary. What do you think? Do you agree? If you don't know yet, then none of these phones got no OIS, and considering that both got EIS, K40 Pro did very good beside Realme GT. I mean, look at the video clip on the left. It's almost as smooth as optical stabilization. On the other hand, Realme GT has a lot more jitteriness. Okay, it's time to wrap up, and the truth is K40 Pro did good but not as good as what we would like. Please comment and let me know what do you think. If you have liked this video, then please don't forget to click on the like button and subscribe to this channel.